Hi guys, Annie here. Today we're traveling to the United States, to Springfield, Illinois, for a new series called Life Lessons. If you're anything like me, you've learned your lessons through living life. Hope you enjoy the story. When I was in my late 30s, I took a job as a banquet director, and we would set up for weddings and political events, that sort of thing. I was always looking for new staff, because most of my staff worked part-time because they were at university or had another job. And I was always looking for that diligent worker who went above and beyond what I needed. And I really found him. His name was Alex. And he wanted any extra shifts I could give him. And he was such a hard worker, and he could really think about what he was setting up, and I never hardly had to check on him. Now, Alex was always asking me for extra work because he and his fiancé had bought a house, and it was a real fixer-upper. And he could take any of the extra money and put it into the house, because also they were expecting a baby soon. And he was such a great guy. We had a lot of different conversations as we were setting all the tables. And he always asked me, he's like, "Miss Ann, do you think you would come over and see my new house?" And I was pretty busy. I mean, sometimes I was working 12, 16 hours a day. But he kept asking and asking and asking, and I thought, why is this so important to this kid? And one afternoon, I didn't have a reason to tell him no. He had been asking all week. And so I said, "You know what, Alex, just as soon as we finish setting this up, I'll run home on our lunch break. I'd love to see your house." And he was so excited. He's like, "Really? Do you mean it? I'm going to call my fiancé and have her clean up a little bit." And I'm like, no, don't have her clean up anything. I mean, she's pregnant, just let her be. I'll come see the house. So he takes me over to the house. It's a few streets away from where we're working. And that part of the neighborhood in Springfield, Illinois, at one time had been a very nice neighborhood. But now it was like a gutted house and then a house being remodeled. And then next to that would be a house that was done being remodeled. So the neighborhood was trying to get built back up again. And obviously, Alex and his fiancée had gotten a really good price for this house. And then he was going to fix it up in time for the baby. So almost as soon as I get out of the car and look at the front of the house, I see that the porch is leaning because the foundation's not very good and the door doesn't really shut very well. And we get in the house, and I think there was a sofa and that's it, and a TV. And then there was a card table set up, a folding table with some chairs for the living room, the dining room. And I think there was a microwave in the kitchen, and that was about it. And I have to tell you, to him, to Alex, this was like his baby. I mean, it was like his pride and joy. He was telling me how he was going to decorate each room, the kind of paint he was going to use. He was going to put up different kind of crown molding around the top. He was going to replace the windows in a couple of years. He had this whole plan in his head about this house. And so as I was going through this rundown house, I realized he sees it through completely rose-colored glasses. He would just describe what the room is going to look like, and how much space they're going to have, and how they're going to fill it with all these children. And, I could really see it made him happy. And so I had to be really careful not to say, "Oh, this is kind of a dump." And as I was leaving, he was like, thank you so much for coming to see my house." And I'm like, "Oh, it's a great house. And I just think you guys are going to do well here." And then I went back to work. And the next couple of days, he just kept talking about how thankful he was that I came to see his house. And one Friday night, he was the only one that could stay late and help me tear down a party to be set up the next day for Saturday morning for a different kind of party. And we had been working really hard. It was about 10 o'clock at night. We pretty much were finished. And he says to me, "Miss Ann, we're almost finished, but could I please just come back in the morning and finish setting up the rest of the tables? Because my fiancé and we were going to go do a little bit of shopping for the baby. And we want to get there before midnight when the store closes." And I was like, "Sure, Alex, go ahead." I'm like, "Do you need a ride home?" And he goes, "No, my fiancé just got off work. She's going to come over and pick me up." So I said goodbye, have a great time. I finished setting what I could. And then the next morning I came in early, thinking that Alex was going to come and help me set up. And there was a knock on my door, and it was a different server. It was this young kid, and he said to me, "Miss Ann, have you heard the news?" And I said, "No, what news?" And he said, "Oh, it's all over the college. Everybody knows what happened." And I'm like, "What happened?" And he said, "Last night, Alex was shot. Somebody tried to rob him and shot him point blank in the face and killed him." And I was so shocked. I couldn't hardly understand what was being told to me. And I'm like, "Are you sure? Like, are you sure this isn't just a rumor?" And I tried calling his number, and it just rang and rang. And then I tried calling his fiance's number. And finally she answered, and she was just sobbing. And she's like, "Oh, Miss Ann, it's true. They shot him. He's dead." And I was just like stunned. Then eventually the police came to interview me because I was one of the last people that saw him. I guess what had happened is that he was waiting in the parking lot, and his girlfriend never came to get him, so he walked home thinking that they miscommunicated. And then later that night, a friend called him, and he gave his friend a ride, and it was actually to an apartment complex right across the street from my Catholic high school. And two guys from St. Louis, two brothers, had come up specifically to carjack people. And they tried to carjack him, just shot him point blank in the face and killed him. And a couple days later, this same staffer came to me, and he's like, "Are you going to be at the funeral? Because most of the college is coming." And I got off work and I was able to go. But in truth, I felt really nervous because I had only met his fiancée one time, and I was going by myself to the funeral. And I walked in, and a couple of my staff came over to say hello to me. And the entire back of the funeral parlor was filled with kids from the local community college. And everybody was crying, and his family was all lined up in the front. And what you do in America is you go through a line and you pay respects, you greet and offer your condolences to the people in the line that are his family and friends. And then if there's an open casket, you see the body and you maybe say a little prayer. And so I was waiting in this huge line. I mean, there was hundreds of people there. Now, I need to say that before you go through the line, they had a speaker come up and speak about his life. And they told the story that this kid had actually been in gangs. He had gotten into drugs really early in life, and he was kind of a street kid. His mom was a single mom. There was a couple brothers involved, and he was really going down the wrong path. And instead of going to jail, he actually had gotten into boxing. And he actually became one of the kind of junior featherweight champions of the state of Illinois in boxing. And that had kept him off drugs, and that had kept him out of the gang. And he had really turned his life around. I never knew that about this kid. I just knew that he was a good worker. And so I thought, when I get to the line, I'm just going to tell people, I was his boss, and he was such a nice guy, and he was so polite, and he was such a hard worker. And so I step up to the mother, and I said, "I just want to offer you my condolences. Your son was such a polite, nice kid. I'm Miss Ann. I was his boss." And that lady grabbed my shoulders, drew me in, and gave me the tightest hug. And she whispered in my ear through her tears, "Oh, Miss Ann, we know exactly who you are. You made such a difference in Alex's life. He always talked about you, and he was always talking about how you came to see his house." And I was just blown away. I mean, you think, I'm going to get choked up here. You think that your life is just going, right? You're just working, you're working with people, you just think they're always going to be there. And then tragedy happens, and they're not there. And then you find out that sometimes the littlest things, the nicest things that you could do, make such a big difference. So, did you get the life lesson? Your life matters. So make a difference today. Thanks so much for watching. Please take a minute to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.